A poor single dad helped a homeless woman and her son on the coldest night of the year. What happened next made her cry. But these weren't tears of sadness. They were the kind of tears you shed when you've forgotten what kindness feels like, and someone finally reminds you. He had $32 in his pocket, a daughter who hadn't smiled in months, and every reason to walk away. But he didn't. And that single decision, made in a split second on a freezing November night, would change 4 lives forever. This is a story of 2 broken people, 2 lonely children, and 1 meal that became the foundation of something none of them saw coming. But before we begin, please tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love seeing how far our stories reach. The November wind cut through downtown Columbus, Ohio, like a blade made of ice. Rowan Mitchell pulled his worn denim jacket tighter around his shoulders, but it did little to stop the cold from seeping into his bones. The jacket was 12 years old, a relic from better days, and the lining had long since given up its fight against winter. But Rowan wasn't thinking about the cold. He was watching his daughter. 7-year-old Wren walked beside him, her small hand wrapped securely around his calloused fingers. Her pink coat, bought secondhand from a thrift store last spring, was zipped all the way to her chin, and her breath came out in little white puffs that danced in the streetlight. They had just finished their Saturday tradition: 1 burger, 1 order of fries, split down the middle. It was all Rowan could afford on his mechanic's salary, but Wren never complained. She never asked for more. She simply sat across from him in that corner booth at Benny's Diner, ate her half slowly to make it last, and smiled like it was a feast. That smile, rare as it had become, was worth more to Rowan than anything money could buy. 3 years. It had been 3 years since Meredith left them. She hadn't died. She hadn't been taken from them by illness or accident. No, Meredith Mitchell had simply decided one Tuesday morning that motherhood wasn't for her. She left a note on the kitchen counter, took the savings account, and vanished. The note had been 3 sentences long. Rowan had burned it, but the wound it left behind, that still bled. Not for himself. He had made peace with Meredith's abandonment long ago. But for Wren, for his little girl who still sometimes asked why Mommy didn't love her enough to stay, that wound would never fully heal.
"Daddy?" Wren's voice pulled him back to the present. "Yes, sweetheart? Can we walk past the fountain, the one with the lights?" Rowan glanced at his watch. It was already past 7, and the temperature was dropping fast. But Wren so rarely asked for anything. "Sure, baby. Let's go the long way." They turned left on Harper Street, passing storefronts decorated with early holiday displays. A coffee shop glowed warm and golden, filled with couples laughing over lattes. A bookstore had stacked its windows with novels wrapped in ribbon. Everywhere Rowan looked, he saw lives that seemed easier than his. He didn't resent them. He just wondered sometimes what that kind of ease felt like. They were halfway down the block when Wren stopped walking. "Daddy, look!" Her voice was barely above a whisper. Rowan followed her gaze across the street to a bus stop shelter. The plexiglass walls did little to block the wind, but someone had tried to make it work anyway. A woman sat on the metal bench, her arms wrapped around a small boy who couldn't have been older than 5. She wore a thin gray sweater, completely inadequate for this kind of cold, and her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Even from across the street, Rowan could see her lips moving, whispering something to the child pressed against her chest. Beside them sat a shopping cart overflowing with plastic bags. Everything they owned, most likely, right there in that cart. "They look cold," Wren said quietly. Rowan felt something tighten in his chest. He knew that look. He recognized it. The hunched shoulders, the desperate grip, the way the woman kept scanning the street like she was waiting for danger to find her. He had seen that look in the mirror once, 3 years ago, When Meredith first left, and he didn't know how he was going to keep the lights on and feed his daughter at the same time. He had clawed his way out of that pit, barely, slowly, one paycheck at a time, but he had never forgotten what it felt like to stand at the edge. "Daddy!" Rowan looked down at his daughter, her eyes, wide and brown and far too knowing for a 7-year-old, were fixed on the woman and child across the street. "Can we help them?" Rowan hesitated. He had exactly $32 in his wallet. Rent was due next week. The water bill was already overdue. The engine light in his truck had been blinking for 3 days, and he had been ignoring it because he couldn't afford to find out what was wrong. $32. That was the difference between making it to Thursday and not. But Wren was still looking at him, waiting, trusting him to do the right thing, whatever that meant. And Rowan Mitchell had learned a long time ago that some things mattered more than mathematics. "Yeah, baby," he said softly, squeezing her hand. "Let's go see if they need some help."
The woman saw them coming. Rowan watched her body language shift the moment they stepped off the curb, the way her spine straightened, her arms tightened around the boy, her chin lifted with a defiance that barely masked the fear beneath it. He understood. When you had nothing, everyone was a potential threat. He stopped a respectful distance from the shelter, keeping his posture open and non-threatening. Wren stood slightly behind him, peeking around his leg. "Evening, ma'am," Rowan said, his voice gentle. "I'm Rowan. This is my daughter, Wren. We were just walking by and noticed you might need some help." The woman stared at him. Up close, she was younger than he had initially thought, early 30s maybe. She had the kind of face that would have been beautiful if exhaustion hadn't carved hollows beneath her cheekbones and shadows under her eyes. Her lips were chapped and colorless, and her hands, wrapped protectively around the boy, were red and raw from the cold. But her eyes were sharp, alert, the eyes of someone who had learned to expect the worst from people and was rarely disappointed. "We're fine," she said flatly. The boy in her arms lifted his head. He was small and thin, with curly brown hair and enormous dark eyes that seemed too big for his face. He looked at Rowan, then at Wren, then back at his mother. "Mama, I'm hungry." Something flickered across the woman's face. Just for a moment, a crack in the armor, a flash of anguish so raw it made Rowan's chest hurt. Then it was gone, smoothed over by that stubborn mask of composure. "We're fine," she repeated, but her voice broke on the last word. Rowan crouched down slowly, bringing himself to eye level with the little boy. "Hey there, buddy. What's your name?" The child glanced at his mother for permission. She hesitated, then gave an almost imperceptible nod. "Asher," the boy said quietly. "Asher," Rowan smiled. "That's a really strong name. I like it." He gestured toward Wren. "This is my daughter, Wren. She's 7. How old are you, Asher?" The boy held up 5 fingers. 5? Wow, that's a great age." Rowan straightened up and looked at the woman again. "Ma'am, there's a diner right across the street. Good food, warm inside. Would you and Asher like to come get something to eat? It's getting pretty cold out here." The woman shook her head slowly, and Rowan saw her jaw tighten. "I don't have money to pay you back," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I don't take charity. I'm not—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "We're not beggars." "I never said you were." "Then why are you offering?" It was a fair question. Rowan considered it carefully before answering. "Because I've been where you are," he said simply. "Maybe not exactly, but close enough. And back then, someone helped me when they didn't have to. I'm just trying to pass it along." The woman studied him for a long moment. Her eyes searched his face, looking for the catch, the angle, the hidden agenda. Rowan let her look. He had nothing to hide. "There's no strings, no expectations. Just a warm meal on a cold night. One parent helping another. that's all." Silence stretched between them. The wind picked up, and Asher shivered against his mother's chest. She pulled him closer instinctively, and Rowan saw her resolve wavering. Then Wren stepped out from behind her father's leg. "Please come," she said softly, looking up at the woman with those big, earnest eyes. "The soup there is really good, and it's warm inside. You and Asher could sit with us." The woman's expression changed. Something in Wren's small, sincere face seemed to reach her in a way Rowan's words hadn't. Maybe it was the innocence. Maybe it was the fact that Wren looked almost as lonely as Asher did. Maybe it was simply the exhaustion of fighting, when fighting took so much energy she no longer had. "I'm Celeste," she finally said, her voice barely audible. "Celeste Harmon." "Nice to meet you, Celeste. Now let's get you and Asher out of this cold." He didn't offer to push the shopping cart for her. He sensed that would have been too much, too fast. Instead, he simply walked beside her as they crossed the street, Wren holding his hand on one side and Celeste pushing her cart on the other. The diner's windows glowed golden against the night, and for the first time in hours, Asher smiled.
The warmth hit them like a wave the moment they stepped inside. Benny's diner was small, just 8 booths and a counter lined with red vinyl stools, but it was clean and bright and smelled like coffee and bacon grease and everything good about simple American comfort food. Rowan led them to a corner booth, helping Celeste navigate her cart between the tables. A few customers glanced up, curiosity flickering in their eyes, but no one said anything. The waitress, a middle-aged woman named Patrice, who had known Rowan for years, simply grabbed an extra set of menus and smiled. "More friends tonight, Rowan?" "Something like that, Patrice. Can we get some hot chocolate for the kids right away, and maybe the soup of the day for the table?" "Coming right up, hon." Celeste slid into the booth, positioning Asher beside her. Wren sat next to Rowan across from them. For a moment, no one spoke. Asher was staring at the menu like it was written in a foreign language, or maybe like he had forgotten that places like this existed. "You can order anything you want, buddy," Rowan said gently. "Don't worry about the price." Celeste's eyes snapped to his. "I can't." "You can," Rowan interrupted softly. "Just this once. Let someone take care of you. It won't make you weak, I promise." She looked like she wanted to argue, but then Asher whispered, "Mama, can I have a grilled cheese?" And whatever fight she had left simply drained away. "Yes, baby," she said quietly. "You can have a grilled cheese." The food came quickly. Hot chocolate for the kids, coffee for the adults, chicken soup and grilled cheese sandwiches and a basket of fries that steamed in the diner's warm air. Rowan ordered a cup of soup for himself, nothing more. He could skip dinner. He'd done it before. Watching Asher eat was almost painful. The little boy devoured his grilled cheese like he hadn't seen food in days, which Rowan realized with a sickening lurch was probably true. He didn't savor it. He didn't pause. He simply ate with the desperate efficiency of a child who learned that food might not always be there when you needed it. Rowan had to look away. Celeste ate more slowly, tears streaming silently down her face. She didn't wipe them away. Maybe she didn't have the energy. Maybe she had simply stopped caring who saw. Wren watched Asher with quiet fascination, then pushed her plate toward him. "You can have some of my fries. I'm not super hungry." Asher looked at his mother. Celeste hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you," Asher whispered, grabbing a fry. Wren smiled, the first real smile Rowan had seen from her in weeks. Something warm bloomed in his chest.
For a while, they ate in silence. But as the meal wound down and the children began to fade, full bellies and warm air working their magic, Celeste finally spoke. "You don't have to explain anything," Rowan said before she could start. "But if you want to talk, I'm listening." Celeste looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, haltingly, she began. "I was a nurse," she said quietly. "Pediatric ward. I loved it. I was good at it. I helped people every single day for 8 years. She paused, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup like she needed its warmth to continue. I met Vincent when I was 25. He was charming, attentive, made me feel like I was the center of his world. She laughed bitterly. I didn't realize until later that he was actually just studying me, learning how to control me. Rowan said nothing. He simply listened. It started small. He didn't like my friends. He thought I worked too much. He wanted to manage our finances because he was better with money. Celeste shook her head. By the time I realized what was happening, I had no friends, no savings of my own, and a husband who tracked my every move. Asher had fallen asleep against her side, his small face peaceful in a way it probably rarely was. She stroked his hair absently as she continued. When I finally worked up the courage to leave, when I finally told myself that Asher deserved better than growing up watching his mother shrink, I discovered that Vincent had drained our accounts, all of them, every penny we had. He did it the day before I left, like he knew. Her voice cracked. I ran anyway. I had to. I grabbed Asher and our important documents, and I just ran. That was 3 months ago. Rowan's hands tightened around his coffee cup. 3 months? Celeste nodded. Shelters are full. Jobs want an address, but apartments want income. It's a cycle you can't break into. She looked down at her sleeping son. I used to help people for a living. Now I can't even help my own child. The words hung in the air between them. Rowan let the silence hold for a moment before he spoke. You're not helpless, Celeste. She looked up, startled. You got yourself and your son out of a dangerous situation. You've kept him fed and safe and alive for 3 months with nothing but your own 2 hands. That takes more strength than most people will ever know. He leaned forward slightly. You're not failing. You're surviving. There's a difference. Celeste stared at him like he was speaking a language she had forgotten how to understand. Kindness. Someone was being kind to her. No strings, no agenda, just kindness. And for the first time in 3 months, she let herself believe it might be real. They stayed at the diner until Patrice started giving them gentle, we're closing soon looks. Rowan helped Celeste gather their things, watching as she carefully tucked the leftover fries into a napkin. His heart ached at the gesture. So small, so automatic, the habit of someone who never knew where their next meal was coming from. Outside, the temperature had dropped even further. The street lights cast pale circles on the frost-covered sidewalk, and their breath came out in thick white clouds. Celeste's shopping cart sat where she had left it, covered in a thin layer of ice crystals. "Where will you go tonight?" Rowan asked quietly. Celeste didn't answer. She didn't need to. The truth was written in the way she pulled Asher closer, in the resigned set of her shoulders, in the way she avoided his eyes. Nowhere. She would go nowhere, because she had nowhere to go. Rowan's mind raced. His apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, barely 800 square feet, in a building that had seen better days. The heating was unreliable, the hot water took forever, the carpet was stained in places he had given up trying to clean. But it was warm, it was safe, it was more than a bus stop shelter on the coldest night of the year. "Come home with us." The words were out before he could stop them. Celeste's head snapped up. "What?" "My apartment," Rowan said quickly. "It's not much at all, actually, but it's warm. You and Asher can stay tonight. You can take my bed and I'll sleep on the couch. Or you can have the couch if that's more comfortable. Either way, you won't be out here in this." Celeste was already shaking her head. "No, absolutely not. I can't. You don't even know me. I could be anyone." "You're a mother trying to protect her son. That's all I need to know." "But, Celeste," Rowan's voice was firm but gentle, "it's going to drop below 20 degrees tonight.
Asher is 5 years old. Please, just let me help." She wavered. I could see it. The war between pride and practicality, between fear and desperation, between the protective walls she had built and the reality that those walls couldn't keep her son warm. "Just one night," he added. "No strings, no expectations. Tomorrow you can leave whenever you want, but tonight, just let me help." Celeste looked down at Asher, still drowsy and clinging to her hand. Then Wren spoke. "Please come," she said softly, looking up at Celeste with those big, earnest eyes. "Asher can share my room. I have lots of blankets, and I have some toys he could play with tomorrow if he wants." Something in Celeste's expression shifted. Maybe it was the simple kindness in Wren's voice. Maybe it was the way the little girl had said tomorrow like it was a given, like of course they would still be there, like of course everything would be okay. Maybe it was simply the cold and the exhaustion and the knowledge that she couldn't survive another night on the streets. "Just one night," Celeste whispered, "just until I figure something out." Rowan nodded, relief flooding through him. Just one night. The apartment was exactly as Rowan had described. Small, worn, unremarkable. But to Celeste, walking through that door felt like stepping into another world. It was warm, really, truly warm, the kind of warmth that seeps into your bones and makes your body remember what it felt like to be safe. The furniture was mismatched and clearly secondhand, but it was clean. Children's drawings decorated the refrigerator. A small TV sat on a stand in the corner. The kitchen was tiny but functional, with dishes drying in a rack by the sink. It wasn't luxurious. It was something better. It was a home. Wren led Asher to her room, chattering quietly about her stuffed animals and her collection of books and the nightlight that looked like a star. Within minutes, both children were asleep, curled up together on Wren's small bed like they had known each other forever. Celeste stood in the doorway, watching them. And something inside her, something she had been holding together with nothing but willpower and fear, finally cracked. She didn't make a sound as she cried. Years of practice had taught her how to grieve silently, how to fall apart without anyone noticing. But her shoulders shook, and the tears came anyway, hot and relentless and unstoppable. Rowan appeared beside her with a blanket. He didn't say anything. He didn't try to fix it or explain it away. He simply handed her the blanket and said, "The couch is pretty comfortable. Get some rest, Celeste. Tomorrow's a new day." Then he retreated to his own room and closed the door, giving her space to break down in peace. Celeste wrapped herself in the blanket, sank onto the couch, and cried until she had nothing left. But for the first time in months, her tears weren't just from pain. They were from relief. One night became 2. 2 became 3. 3 became a week. The days blurred together in a way that felt almost dreamlike. Each morning, Celeste would wake on the couch, certain that today would be the day she gathered her things and left. Each evening, she would find another reason to stay. Asher needed stability. The job search was taking longer than expected. The weather was too harsh. The truth, the one she didn't want to admit even to herself, was simpler. She didn't want to leave. For the first time in years, Celeste felt something she barely recognized. Safety, peace, the absence of fear. She woke without her heart pounding. She fell asleep without running through escape routes in her mind. She breathed without waiting for the other shoe to drop. And she wasn't the only one who was changing. The apartment itself seemed to transform. It had been quiet before, too quiet, the kind of silence that settles in when loneliness becomes routine. But now it rang with laughter. Wren and Asher were inseparable.
They built blanket forts in the living room. They colored at the kitchen table, heads bent together over shared crayons. They whispered secrets and invented games and squabbled over nothing, the way all children do, and then forgave each other instantly, the way only children can. Wren, who had been withdrawn and quiet for so long, bloomed like a flower finally getting sunlight. And Asher, who had flinched at sudden movements when he first arrived, who had eaten like food might be taken away at any moment, began to relax. His shoulders unknotted. His smiles came easier. He stopped looking over his shoulder. Celeste insisted on contributing. "I won't freeload," she told Rowan firmly. "Let me do something." So she cooked. She cleaned. She helped Wren with her homework and discovered the girl was struggling with math, then spent patient hours working through problems until understanding dawned in those brown eyes. She was a natural caregiver. Even stripped of everything, her job, her home, her identity, that core truth remained. And Rowan noticed. He noticed everything. He noticed the way she hummed while washing dishes, old songs he didn't recognize. He noticed the way she checked on both children twice each night before allowing herself to sleep. He noticed the way she laughed, really laughed, 3 days in, when Asher said something ridiculous about spaghetti being better than all other foods combined. That laugh transformed her face. It erased the hollow shadows, the tension, the ghosts of the past. And Rowan thought, with a strange ache in his chest, that he could listen to that sound for the rest of his life. The evenings became their time. After the children fell asleep, Rowan and Celeste would sit at the kitchen table with cups of decaf, talking about everything and nothing. She told him about nursing, the long hours, the heartbreak, the moments of pure joy when a child went home healthy. She told him about growing up in a small town in Indiana, the only daughter of a mechanic father and a schoolteacher mother, both gone now. He told her about his own dreams, the architecture degree he had abandoned when money ran out, the buildings he still sketched sometimes in a notebook no one ever saw. He told her about Meredith, about the note, about the years of piecing himself and Wren back together. "She just left?" Celeste asked quietly one night. "No warning?" "No warning," Rowan confirmed. "One day she was there, the next she wasn't. She said motherhood wasn't for her." He shrugged, but the old pain flickered in his eyes. "I've made peace with it, mostly. But Wren still wonders why she wasn't enough." Rowan looked at her sharply. "How did you know?" "Because I see it in her," Celeste said softly. "That careful way she watches people, like she's waiting for them to leave too." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Rowan said very quietly, "She's different since you came. Lighter, happier. I haven't seen her this way in—" He trailed off. "I was going to say the same thing about Asher," Celeste admitted. "He's been through so much, seen so much, but with Wren, he just gets to be a kid again." Their eyes met across the table. Something passed between them, unspoken but unmistakable. Neither acknowledged it. Not yet. Some things need time to grow. 2 weeks became a month. Celeste found a job. A nursing home on the east side of the city had been desperate for experienced staff. They didn't care about her gap in her employment history. They didn't ask about her address. They simply handed her a set of scrubs and told her when to show up. She cried in the bathroom after her first shift, not from sadness, but from overwhelming relief. She could do this. She could rebuild. That night, she handed Rowan her first paycheck. "For rent," she said firmly, "and don't even think about refusing." He tried to refuse anyway. She wouldn't let him. "This matters to me. I need to contribute. I need to feel like I'm earning my place here, not just taking. Rowan looked at the check in his hand. Then he looked at her. You've never been just taking, Celeste. You've been giving more than you know. She didn't know what to say to that, so she simply smiled and went to check on the children.
6 weeks after that November night, everything changed. The children were asleep, curled together in Wren's room as had become their habit, a tangle of small limbs and steady breathing. Celeste had tucked them in with stories, as she did every night now, and Rowan had stood in the doorway and watched. Something about the scene made his heart ache in the best possible way. Now they sat on the small balcony, wrapped in blankets against the cold. The city glittered below them, a sea of lights stretching toward the horizon. The air was crisp but not unbearable, and their breath formed small clouds as they talked. Celeste was quiet tonight, pensive. "I'd found an apartment," she said suddenly. The words hit Rowan like a physical blow. He forced his expression to remain neutral, forced his voice to stay steady. "Oh? It's small, smaller than this even, but it's in a decent neighborhood and I can afford it on my salary." She stared out at the city, avoiding his eyes. "We could move in next month." Silence stretched between them. He should have been happy for her. He knew that. After everything she had been through, she deserved stability. She deserved independence. She deserved the chance to stand on her own 2 feet and prove to herself that she could. But all he felt was cold, colder than the November air. That's great news," he managed. "Really, I'm happy for you." Celeste nodded slowly. She still wasn't looking at him. The silence stretched on. Finally, in a voice so quiet he almost didn't hear it, she spoke again. "Unless there's a reason we should stay." Rowan's breath caught. He turned to look at her. In the dim light from the apartment windows, he could see tears glistening on her cheeks. "Celeste, I wasn't looking for this," she whispered, still staring at the skyline. "After Vincent, I swore I would never trust another man. I built walls so high I thought no one would ever get through. I told myself that was how it had to be, that protecting myself and Asher meant never letting anyone close again." Finally, she turned to face him. "But then there was you, Rowan. You showed up at a bus stop on the worst night of my life, and you didn't see a homeless woman. You didn't see a charity case or a burden or a mistake. You saw a mother. You saw a person." Her voice broke. "You gave us your home. You shared your daughter with my son. You never once made me feel like I owed you anything, never once looked at me with pity or judgment or expectation. You just let me be. Let me heal. Let me remember what it felt like to be worth something." The tears were falling freely now, tracing silver paths down her face. "I don't know when it happened. I don't know when I started falling. Maybe it was the first night when you handed me that blanket and walked away. Maybe it was the week after when I heard you reading to Wren and realized you were using different voices for each character. Maybe it was every single day in between, watching you be patient and kind and good in a world that doesn't always reward those things."
She laughed softly, wetly. "I told myself it was just gratitude, that I was confusing kindness with something more. But it's not just gratitude, Rowan. It's not. And I think I need to know if I'm alone in this. Because if I am, I'll take that apartment and I'll build my life somewhere else. And I'll be fine. I will be. I've survived worse." She took a shaky breath. "But if I'm not alone, if there's even a chance that you feel something too, then I need to know. Because I'm standing here terrified out of my mind, and I need to know if this is real." Rowan was on his feet before he realized he had moved. He crossed the small space between them and took her face in his hands, gently, so gently, like she was something precious he was afraid of breaking. "You're not alone," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Celeste, you have never been alone. Not since that first night. Maybe not since the moment I saw you at that bus stop, and something in me just knew." She was crying harder now, but smiling too.
that radiant, transformative smile he had only glimpsed before. "I was so afraid to say anything," Rowan continued. "You'd been through so much. I didn't want to pressure you or make you feel obligated or complicate things when you were just starting to find your feet. But every single day I watched you with the kids, and I watched you in my kitchen, and I watched you just exist in my space, and I thought, this is what home is supposed to feel like. This is what I didn't even know I was missing." He wiped her tears with his thumbs. "You asked if there's a reason you should stay. Celeste, there are 1,000 reasons, but the biggest one is this. I don't want you to go. Not next month, not ever. I want you here, not because you have nowhere else to go, but because this is where you belong. You and Asher, with me and Wren, as a family." The word hung between them. Family. "Are you sure?" Celeste whispered. In answer, Rowan lowered his head and kissed her, soft and slow and full of every word he couldn't say. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were crying. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," he said. And standing there on that tiny balcony, wrapped in old blankets, surrounded by the glittering lights of a city that had almost swallowed her whole, Celeste Harmon finally let herself believe in second chances. 6 months later. Spring had arrived in Columbus, painting the city in shades of green and gold. The air was warm and sweet, carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass and blooming flowers. In Riverside Park, 2 children raced across the grass, their laughter carrying on the afternoon breeze. Wren had grown 3 inches since November. She wore her dark hair in twin braids now, a style Celeste had taught her, and her smile came easily, freely, without the old shadows lurking behind it. Asher was different too, fuller, healthier. The hollow cheeks and haunted eyes had been replaced by the round, rosy face of a child who knew where his next meal was coming from, who knew he was safe, who knew he was loved. They were playing some complicated game involving imaginary dragons and secret kingdoms, a game that only made sense to them and that changed rules every 30 seconds. Rowan and Celeste sat on a nearby bench, watching. Their hands were intertwined, resting on Rowan's knee. On Celeste's left hand, a small silver ring caught the sunlight. Not an engagement ring, not yet, but a promise, a symbol, something real and tangible to hold on to. "Do you ever think about that night?" Celeste asked quietly. Rowan nodded slowly. "All the time." "What do you think about?" He was quiet for a moment, watching their children, because that's what they were now, their children, 4 hearts woven into one family. "I think about how close I came to walking by," he admitted. "It would have been so easy. It was cold, I was tired, I had $32 to my name, and every reason to just keep going, to pretend I didn't see you." Celeste squeezed his hand. "But you didn't." "No." He turned to look at her, this woman who had stumbled into his life on the worst night of hers and somehow made everything better. "I didn't, and thank goodness for that, because I can't imagine my life without you anymore, without any of you." Celeste leaned her head against his shoulder. "You saved us, you know," she said softly. Rowan shook his head. "No, we saved each other. You and Asher, you gave me back something I didn't even know I'd lost. You gave Wren a mother again. You gave this family a heart." Across the park, Wren and Asher had collapsed in a giggling heap on the grass. Wren was pointing at the sky, showing Asher shapes in the clouds. A dragon, a castle, a family holding hands. Celeste smiled, watching them. "All of this," she murmured, "because you stopped at a bus shelter." "All of this," Rowan agreed, "because I chose to see someone who needed help and decided that helping was more important than anything else." He pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. Some moments, he had learned, become the turning points of entire lives. They don't announce themselves. They don't come with fanfare or warning. They simply arrive, quiet, ordinary, easily missed, and wait to see what you'll do with them. A cold November night, a stranger at a bus stop, a choice. From such small acts of kindness, families are built. From such ordinary moments, extraordinary love grows. And Rowan Mitchell, once a poor single father with nothing but love to give, had discovered the most important truth of all. Sometimes, nothing but love is everything.
If this story touched your heart, leave a comment below and share it with someone who needs to hear that kindness still exists in this world. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Soul Tales and turn on notifications, because every story we tell here is a reminder that second chances are real, that broken people can find each other, and that love can grow in the most unexpected places. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Until next time.